Hey everyone, it's Julian, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to make the modern deep house sound. You know, the sound of deep house changes every 5 years, and today we're going to be talking about the more recent stuff in the style of Djoko and Artmann. As usual, you can get the full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available right at the top of the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there, because it's already available, and let's get started. So here we are. We're on 128 BPM, a little bit faster, but you know, it really contributes to the overall atmosphere of the track, because with this style of deep house, it's a lot more kind of like skippy, and it's really like garage influenced for sure. You know, so that faster tempo gives you a bit more of an aggressive kind of like percussive feel versus like, you know, if we were at like 122 BPM or 123 or something like that you might think of as a more standard deep house tempo, it wouldn't really have that same feel to it, and it would feel kind of off, you know, so definitely faster tempos work well for this style. And the first thing we have up here is the low one. So we have this kick, just a nice, super punchy 909 style kick, you know, very boomy. Like, you want to make sure that the 909 is not just like a, you know, like a little, like it really needs to have that like boom to it as well. So like, yeah, just look around different places where they have 909 samples. If you have a 909 yourself, you can make the kick using that, you know, and then you can really shape it. But just like, it's just really about getting a good sample like this. And then the bass. So it's all just in this B minor scale. That's the key that we're in. So you can see we start with the root note. That's what's important. If you're going to do one of these bass lines where, you know, you're bouncing around and using different notes and kind of playing with the scale, that works fine. But you have to establish very clearly what the root note is first. So yeah, that's why it starts with right on B. And then we also just have like this part up here. So it goes from B up to D, which is the minor third, E, the fourth, and then F sharp, which is the fifth. So and then this A down here is just the minor seventh. So it's all just notes that are pretty straightforward for that scale, but it's all about the rhythm. And just making something that's groovy and also has that sort of jazzy feel to it. The sound for this bass line is 2 layers, and it's a lot simpler than you would think for being 2 layers. It's basically just this little plucky, well, I shouldn't say little, but it's this plucky. So on square wave bass, you can see there's no FM happening here, even though we're using operator. And then that's just going into a low pass filter, which has an envelope on it. So that's just how we make this, like, you know, more of a plucky sort of bass. And then we also just have a high pass filter on that because we don't want to have too much low end coming from this. This is really just for the mid-range, the low mid-range, and kind of like that area. Like, because underneath it we have the sub, which, as you can hear and see, the sub is literally just a sine wave. So we're just using this to make a more even and consistent low end, because typically when you take a saw wave and a square wave and put them together and then low pass them and try to just focus on the low end from that, you know, it can be a bit messy. We wanted just like a nice deep low sine wave that is just really going to sound like it's part of the saw wave and the square wave. You know, it really just sounds like one bass, but it's kind of filling in the spaces where they aren't as strong. Then we just have a bit of saturation to kind of glue those together, a compressor, side chaining the bass to the kick, and then this EQ, just cutting out a little bit of room for the kick. And then on the groove of the low end, you can see we don't have anything. So it's just a nice, very fat kick, very fat bass line, and then when you let them play side by side, it just works together. You don't really need to do too much like saturating or compressing them, and really this helps because it's just going to sound a lot cleaner in the end. You know, if you use saturation so much throughout the whole thing, that can get you there, and for certain styles that works, but with this deeper style of house, you know, we want the sound to be deeper. We don't want it to be as aggressive and crunchy. This high pass filter here is actually pretty important. That just comes in here at the end. It's got two automations. So we have this filter frequency automation and then the filter device on automation. So it comes on, and then everything kind of filters out, but then it comes back down. So this is actually a really good technique that I've noticed with this style of music. It's a really subtle thing, but when you just have it all disappear and then kind of come right back down before the start of the next bar, it just sounds really smooth to have that like kind of coming back in, versus if I just take it and make it go up like that, you know, it's not quite the same effect. So it's these little tiny details like this that are going to make a big difference when you're making more minimal styles of house like this. So then after that, we have all of these little chord sounds down here. So as you can hear, they're all kind of playing off of each other, and I have them split into different groups here. So the first group would be these two pads. So for this first one here, it's made with analog. The chord that it's playing is just a B minor chord. Yeah, you can see it starts with B, but we've kind of voiced it in a more interesting way, because typically a B minor chord would be B, D, and F sharp, just in that order, and that would just be like a basic, what we would call a triad. Here, we've taken that shape where we have the same notes. We have the B, we have the F sharp, and we also have the D up here, but then we've added in also this minor seventh, and then we've added in the ninth as well, which, as you can see, is just one note down from that minor third, D. So we have D and C sharp playing right next to each other, right up top. So it's going to feel very, like, kind of jazzy and deep when you have those two almost dissonant notes playing together, but they fit well because they're in the same key and because of how they work in the key. For the sound, it's made with analog, like I said, so this is just two saw waves going into a low-pass filter, no envelope, but then we're automating the filter frequency. With these, it's typically easier to just kind of shape it with the automation, because, you know, it's like, after a certain point, when you're trying to do something like this, you know, you could try to draw it in with the envelope, but it's like, you know, you can just make it do that same envelope where it goes like, kind of like down, but then also have it build out. Versus if we just try to do this with the envelope, you really just have like the or it builds up. You can't really have like that sequence like that. From the amp envelope, it's like that. And then we just have a bit of vibrato and unison. Then we just have some chorus, a bit of reverb, bit of drum bus to fatten it up, you know, pretty standard stuff. And then just a compressor side chaining to the kick and a high pass filter. And then for the second pad, so this is also actually kind of a similar chord to the last one. So again, just a basic B minor chord, but then we have this minor seventh on top, which is A, which you can see the minor seventh is not really that fancy. It's literally just two notes down from the root and then up an octave like that. So yeah, so we have that B minor 7 chord. And then for the sound with this one, this is also made with two saw waves, and then those are going into a low pass. This one has an envelope, so this one is more of just like a wow, like that. You can see we've got the amp envelope set like that. We have a bit of vibrato and unison just like that last one, and then you can see the processing is also pretty similar to that last pad. Now, the thing with this one is you want it to be a little bit shorter, you know, because all these other chords playing around it are very like quick and choppy. So even though it's technically like a pad, it's not really that ambient. So we just have this short reverb on here, you know, just a bit of chorus. Then some drum bus, which the drum bus really helps with these because it gives it texture. You know, with these, you really want them to have like some color to them and some character. If it's just like this super dry sounding, you know, saw wave, it's not really gonna work. So the drum bus works really well for that. Then we just have it being sidechained, and we have a high pass filter. So that's the pads. Then we have these chords, which are made to be a bit more choppy, but still with synths. So if you look at the MIDI for these, basically what's happening is, yeah, you can see it's just creating this little sequence. These two kind of play together here. And what's happening is, it's all just playing little inversions of the B minor chord. Like we have this B minor 7, that one, same chord as that last pad was playing. Then this, where it's just two of the notes. Then there it's a triad. Same deal with this one, except this one only plays these two. And then we're just kind of like, what you do is you make like one sequence of those, and then all these over here that you see, like how it kind of looks choppy and there's little MIDI clips that like don't even have anything in there. The reason why is because once I made this little sequence here, all you have to do is then you can take that and copy it and paste it throughout the track, but just change it a little bit each time. And then you get new sequences. So it's kind of like an easy way of doing it, rather than like every single one of these going through and placing each note, you know, exactly how you would want it to be. It's like instead you can just kind of go and like, you know, take this little piece and paste it there, and then take this piece and put it in between, and kind of like make something new that way. So, you know, it's definitely a good way of working with these. Now for the actual sounds on these, so for this first one, it's this analog patch where you can see we just got two saw waves, a low pass filter with an envelope. It's also got a bit of key tracking. We have an amp, the amp envelope being set like that, and then we also have just a bit of vibrato and a bit of unison. And then this is going into a vocoder. So that's what's creating the sound. You can see we have the formant shift actually just being automated. So it's constantly being automated across all of these. And that's how you get that kind of cool morphing texture. Now, both of these people that I mentioned in this video, and a lot of these style of tracks in general, are using like very interesting sound design with the chords. You know, it's not usually going to be just like a saw wave with a low pass filter. You know, if you do that, like you see here, there's always something like this vocoder to just make it a bit more interesting, because it's like, you know, chord stabs being made with saw waves and square waves is nothing new. But this is something new that we can do to kind of make it fresh and not just the same thing as every other deep house track that we've ever heard before. So it's kind of an interesting way of working with it. And the key to this is essentially using this modulator setting. This allows you to kind of just use the vocoder like a filter. Like if you put it on these other ones, so you don't really get the same thing. The modulator setting is what you want if you're trying to use it like this, kind of like a filter. So yeah, and then after that, we just have a bit of reverb and some drum bus. You can see it's a really short reverb. The short reverbs are great though with these, you know, because without it, it can tend to sound a bit too dry. Like if you add that, it's just going to give it that extra little bit of like room, you know, to make it feel a bit more real. And then on the second chord, this one's just like this simple patch. You can see it's just two sine waves inside of operator with a bit of a low pass filter with the sine shaper, and then some reverb, really short, just like that last one. So this one is really just meant to be in the in-between spaces with that last one. Now, you may be saying to yourself, well, why don't you just put in the same chords with the first chord stab, or with the vocoder stab, I mean? And the reason why is because actually a big part of what creates this sound, and this is important when you're making tracks, is the sort of dynamic between two of them, where like, you know, there's slightly different volumes, one is a little bit of a different sound than the other one. It's all that happening there, and that's really what's creating like these complex patterns, especially over here where it's like three of them. So that's something to keep in mind there, and that's essentially the idea behind why we have two of these here. And then the last layer of these chords here are the stabs, which sound like this. So the technique with these is essentially taking audio stabs, like sampled stabs from old records and different, just kind of cool textured sounds that you find. I'll play you the original stabs. So you can hear that's like a Rhodes, like jazzy kind of stab, but then we've taken it and we've shaped it into this. And then for the second one, it's the same kind of thing, just like these cool stabby Rhodes sort of things. So I recommend you try this. Like, just try and like play some chords or make some chords with MIDI, bounce them out to audio, and then what you do, and what I've done with both of these, is it's essentially taking them into the sampler and then using the filter with an envelope on it. You can see we have like this really, really short envelope on this one, and that's what creates that kind of like really quick, plucky sound. And then on the second one, you can see same deal. And this one, we're actually automating the filter frequency to make it a bit more dynamic. So yeah, it's a cool way of doing it. You know, I've shown this a little bit before on this channel, but this is taking it to another level. Again, like, you know, it just gives a lot of diversity, because now we have audio stabs that have their own texture that are being brought in from the samples. We have these synth little like short stabs, and then we have these longer synth pads. And when you put together all of these, you can see, like, this is how much stuff you need to have, and this is how frequently it needs to be happening too. Because if you just have like one or two little ones in these, it's not really going to sound like a full professional track. It's going to sound like the intro, or it's just going to be kind of missing something. This is really what's going to give the track energy, is all the dynamic between these different things happening at once. And also you can see, I'll talk about the processing on this last ones as well. You can see it's pretty simple. So just a bit of chorus, short reverb, drum bus, and then just a bit of short echo on that second one. And yeah, then we have the hi-hats. So we have 3 layers here. This one, which is kind of like the mid-range punch. This one, which adds some nice, like, bright highs. And then this one, which is your main, like, 909, like, sort of like deep house hat. And you can see we've shortened that one as well, with the sustain being turned down and the decay turned down as well. And yeah, so this is something I want to highlight. It's kind of like with the stabs, where it's like if you don't have enough of these, it's going to be a little bit weak as well. Notice how, like, if I take, so here's what all 3 of them sound like together. If I take any one of these out, all of a sudden it's too weak. So it's all about just getting these layers together where it's like multiple different sounds. It doesn't have to be 3. It could be 2, it could be 4, it could be 8, however many it is that makes the sound. But yeah, you just want to get things that are going to complement each other, because we can have like the best, like, but combine it with the best, and then you get the best of both worlds, rather than just having one and then having it not really have like that same, like, you know, one on its own isn't really gonna sit on top of the track like you want. And then we have this little shaker and tambourine. So it's like a kind of quiet, more background shaker. And then the tambourine plays every other 16th note. So you can hear that. And then when you play those together, it creates a nice groove, because you get kind of like, you know, like the alternating sound. And the last thing that we have down here is the percussion. So you can hear, this is really very garage influence. Like I was talking about, like the garage influence on the style. You know, this percussion is straight out of garage. We just have like this quick and very cracky clap like this. You know, not a whole lot of like, just a quick little. We have the snare. You know, very like UK classic house. And then this percussion even. And then those are all 3 just going through this really short reverb. It's not that wet, but it just gives it all kind of a little bit more space in the mix. And then just this high pass filter with a little bit of a high end boost to just bring out a little bit more of the like frequencies. And yeah, so that is going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available right at the top of the description on my Bandcamp. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. Thank you so much to everybody who supports these. It really helps to keep me going and keep me bringing you guys new videos like this every single day. And yeah, thank you so much everyone, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.